Welcome back to the making of Spore in HD, part number 2. So we start things off with a clip from episode 6.5, an episode I don't blame anyone for skipping over, as it's only a handful of lame internet jokes added to the cutscenes. The whole joke to that episode was contrasting early civilization in Spore to the internet subculture. You'll find very little intelligence and a whole bunch of bad ideas. This scene of the instruments was done in a new civilization phase. I just plot fail in and watched what the citizens did, and I eventually got this clip of them playing music. Hard mode in the Civ stage is fast and furious, so that led to me needing to use pause at some points of the stage just to be able to compete with the computer. I limited pause usage exclusively for giving orders to multiple ships at the same time because the game doesn't offer UI elements or key bindings to set up groups to command ships, so I needed the extra time to point and click and send my ships. The first plan I had in the Civ stage was to befriend the Green Nation, which was the economic nation on our planet. I was hoping to buy up the cities, keep things peaceful, be in control, but Orange Nation immediately went right for green, so the hard mode requires you to grab a city right away. Otherwise, one nation will rise to power and just immediately crush you. And it was obvious Orange was going to be that nation. So I changed my course and went for the Red Nation, which now I realize was actually the Crimson Nation, but since I'm a guy, red is red. If it's reddish, it's still red. So for the sake of continuity, I'm calling them red. Anyways, back to the Green Nation, where I tried to steal a city out from under Orange in the attempt to get an advantage, but they just barely beat me. And then, oddly enough, Orange started heading right for the city I had just captured. So I immediately took over Orange's city. Then I had to race back, and their firepower was just unbelievable. It was like they had went through all my files and picked the strongest ship they possibly could. So instead of allowing all my ships to get destroyed, I decided to disband them and save the money. Overall, that slowed the stage way down, but it gave me some sense of being in control again. This animation I used for city capturing was taken from the game Advance Wars 2 again, so you can see it's not exact, but it pays homage to it. I planned the animation before I started editing the rest of this episode. I've tested out the concept to see if it could even work. I began filming separate elements like houses, turrets, enemy ships, and I wanted to use the battle animation for every fight I had. But once I figured out how tedious it really was, about 45 minutes to do a 5-second clip, I ultimately just left it at 2 versions. So it ended up being 8 separate layers on top of the video, and it was very time consuming, but I could not figure out a simpler way. Eventually the money from the spice began to build up, and I upgraded Fail City with factories and houses, and the city was constantly under attack during the Civ stage, so it was my main priority to keep the defense of that city up high and not let the buildings get destroyed. So for the next 10 minutes of gameplay, I had nothing to do except defend the city with my turrets. So since that was really boring, I cut out about 95% of all that for the video. Because of that, I felt I needed to add something to the video just to make it more interesting. So I got the idea to give characters voices. It felt like it was something that would help expand upon the actual playthrough, because the way it was going was just so boring that I couldn't even enjoy it. I didn't want to make a boring, long, drawn-out playthrough that takes 2 hours to watch. So at the very end of the episode, you see this little text bubble, and that's where the beginning of the whole writing lines for the troops to say started. And here we start off part 8, and I added an intro to it because I felt the series was going to go through a new radical direction, so I might as well just go all out. And I was inspired by the Doctor Who TV series, and I'll show a little clip of what the intro from the show looked like at one point. And there it is. Got starfields, faces, tubular, shiny shapes, and it was just really impressive. So I went into the space stage and began filming wormholes with the stars, and I just kind of threw it all together in Sony Vegas and set it to Doctor Who music because, you know, that theme song is awesome for being nearly 50 years old. You know, to this day it still rocks. So you won't believe what game the speech bubble design came from. You may need to brace yourself. Advance Wars 2. Anywho, I recorded a large number of voices and did different takes to try and make it sound like they were different Vale. Upon playing back the voices, I didn't really like them. I guess I'm just really self-conscious and don't like how recordings of my voice sound. Here are various clips that didn't make the final cuts of the videos. They were intended to be used during battle animations, but I scrapped them in favor of doing the voices. So I took my recordings and applied filters and voice effects to them. I tested some out to see which filters worked best on what voices. Ultimately, I got a few distinct sounding voices which I gave to the fail troops. I added a little distortion to make it sound like they were over the radio frequencies. Now, as for the voice of the Orange Nation, I modeled it along the lines of the warmongering species in the actual game that had a real rough sounding voice. And I ended up filtering it and layering two voices together, and it kind of gave it this underwater sound effect. And that it was so unique that I'm like, okay, that works, that's good. Yeah, I just went with that one. I also wanted to do away with annotations, and just going into YouTube's editor and doing the annotations, it just made it feel like it was tacked on. So I refined my speech bubbles and edited the text directly into the videos, thus it gave me complete control over how it looked. Part 8 was dedicated to showing the Orange vs. Vale fight, and I spent nearly all my spice to make every vehicle I could, and it was a real rough fight. At one point they actually managed to destroy every vehicle I had, and ultimately Orange sent a large amount of boats to go attack Vale City. It left them with a minimal number of actual vehicles to defend their city. Then the boats turned around to come back, but it was too late for them. It was a real triumph for Vale. They defeated the powerhouse of an army, but now it only gets worse for them. I wanted the viewers to think, who could possibly be worse than Orange? I wanted to continue the voices, so I started to look at website what makes a villain evil. I needed someone who was strong, hell-bent on destroying his enemies, someone who you could not negotiate with, an evil power with a cold heart, and I pieced it all together, and I ended up with a somewhat robotic-sounding voice that just felt right for the Blue Nation. So, now on to part 9. Quick, what game influenced this intro clip? No, not Advance Wars 2. It was Advance Wars Dual Strike. Oh, fooled you there. Anywho, part 9 starts off with the song Mr. Bad Guy by Freddie Mercury. I would say it sort of fits as a theme for Blue because he is the bad guy. The voices and personalities come back in part 9. This time they have names to go along with them, kinda. Not personal names, but generic names that correspond with them. Back to the action, the Blue Nation immediately sent over airships to laser us to death, and it proved to be a difficult tactic to defend against. The airships would not stay in range of any of my ships long enough to just attack back. So I had to rely heavily on turrets, and they blew up a lot of friggin' turrets. Then I started off the storyline by introducing the commanding officer of the Vale Nation, C.O. Quines. I got the name from the chieftain in the tribal stage, and I decided, you know, hey what, maybe I'll make him the descendant of the chieftain. So I saved his voice for this episode because I wanted him to be the star of the episode along with Blue, but also at the time of part 8, I wasn't able to create a voice suitable for him, so I pushed it back. You know, it took a few extra days, but eventually I was able to record a voice that I wanted for Quines. Now, the Blue voice was the easiest one of them all to do. I just said the lines into the microphone and the voice filter did the rest. And I needed something really easy because doing all these lines was starting to hurt my voice. I recorded all the voices in one day, in one long sitting. And I put them all in the video, but some just did not sound right. And I needed to re-record some of them. But I wasn't able to duplicate the Quine's voice when I was re-recording, so I ended up just removing the lines that didn't sound good, or reassigning the lines to a character I could do more easily. And as for the script, it was done on the fly. So it required a lot more speaking than the previous episode to keep the story going. Anyways, that's going to do it for this part, and come back for part number 3, and hopefully I'll be able to wrap all this up. Thanks for watching.